So if I could please ask the following dignitaries to please come to the side of the stage as you're called, starting with none other than the Honourable Jason Clare, Australia's Education Minister. Please make your way to the side of the stage. The Honourable Harsh Sangvi, the Minister for State. The Honourable Lisa Singh, CEO of the Australia-India Institute. And Professor Renee Leon, Vice-Chancellor of Charles Sturt University.
Resort and Spa. I'm very thrilled to have all of you here this evening for the Australia India Institute's Annual Oration for 2023. Then after I think it's there is, no exception to saying that the last 2 days have been momentous for the Australia-India education relationship. And it is very befitting that to end this important 2-day ministerial visit, that we have Ministers, the Honourable Shri Dhanendra Pradhanji joining us this evening, and the Honourable Minister Jason Clare MP to give our annual oration. We are very honoured to have both of them here with us. But I would also like to especially acknowledge the Honourable Shri Harsh Sangvi Ji, the Minister of State for Gujarat, Home, Industries, Youth, Sport and Culture. It's wonderful to be in your state, Minister. Thank you for joining us. And of course, can I also welcome the Australian delegation that have travelled here to Gujarat with the Minister, and all of the Indian delegation, all of the distinguished guests that have travelled across India to come to this important Asian evening. The Institute first hosted the Annual Oration in New Delhi in 2016. The idea of the oration is to bring our two countries closer together, and it's been centred on issues of significance to both of our nations. Thought leaders have delivered the Annual Oration over these years, making remarkable contributions to strengthen the Australia-India relationship. And it continues to serve as an important platform for government, business, academia, civil society, students from across Australia and India to engage on issues of relevance to both of our nations. At the Institute, our mission is simple: to increase the policy and public importance of India as a crucial partner of Australia's future, and of Australia as a crucial partner of India's future. The work we do is aimed at forging a stronger and more enduring partnership, and it is our work in supporting the education relationship, one of our key pillars at the Institute, that is most relevant and evident. In the past year alone, we have delivered research reports, analysis, fellowships, workshops, grants to support the Australian government's agenda and build a closer tie with India. One of our significant initiatives is Arch India, the Australian Researcher Cooperation Hub, launched at the AIEC meeting in Sydney last year, and it's become a hub for Australian and Indian researchers, fostering academic connections, facilitating knowledge sharing, and opening doors to collaboration and mobility. Our online growing researcher community boasts over 900 academic profiles, and since August 2021, the platform has attracted more than 72,000 distinct users and 260,000 views. We have utilised this Arch India platform to run our fellowships program this year. Our Australia-India Research Students Fellowships program supported 63 Australian and Indian researchers over an 8-week exchange with each other's country to undertake short-term exchanges, expanding and deepening our bilateral research collaboration and contributing to lasting people-to-people ties. And tonight, we are lucky to have 5 of those fellows here with us, who returned from Australia and have come from all over India. And I would just like to ask those fellows to just stand up. And finally, we are absolutely thrilled that our latest research, mapping higher education engagement between Australia and India, a compendium, was launched yesterday by our education ministers. So as I've highlighted, the Institute's reports, its analysis, its knowledge sharing activities really help shape engagement across the sector, support market entry, boost networks, and activate conversations and collaborations. We are very grateful for the ongoing support of the Australian Government through Minister Jason Clare and his Department of Education that enables us to play such a crucial and critical role in strengthening the learning, skilling, and research engagement between our two countries. And we look forward to continuing to support government in delivering its education skills vision for Australia and India into the future. So on that note, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Renee Leon, the Vice Chancellor of Charles Sturt University, to welcome and introduce the Minister. Thank you, Renee.
Excellencies, Ministers, distinguished guests, my fellow Vice Chancellors, it's truly an honour to be here at the proceedings, and it's been an honour to be part of this truly
the last 2 days that we've spent have been both a demonstration of, but also a deepening of the Australia-India relationship, a relationship based on our shared strategic priorities, but especially based on our shared belief in the transformative power of education. It's a shared commitment that we've seen on display throughout every event of the past 2 days, and a shared commitment not only to that vision, but to taking that journey together of building the education future in India and for India and with Australia. I think it's worth reflecting on what a commitment is demonstrated when 2 ministers take 2 full days out of their incredibly demanding lives to spend focusing entirely on this important issue in this significant relationship. It's a major commitment that demonstrates their commitment to the future of the relationship between India and Australia in deepening the education vision. I knew, of course, that Australia had a visionary education minister because I've had the pleasure of working with the Honourable Jason Clare since he was sworn in as Minister for Education. But it has been truly wonderful to see the visionary education minister that leads India's education future, and to see the commitment that India has made to the very ambitious journey of creating the workforce for the future and building on its demographic dividend of such a young and growing workforce. Over the 2 days, we've had and it seems amazing to think that it's only been 2 days if we look back on all that's been achieved, the first meeting of the Australia-India Education and Skills Council, which has already commenced and has now committed to progressing an ambitious program of work to build on the recognition of qualifications and the arrangements that have been made to enable shared education goals. And of course, Australia has been honoured and excited to be the first nation to launch campuses in India of our universities in Gift City. Truly wonderful occasion today, launching both the Deakin and Wollongong campuses at Gift City. And we've had representatives at Vice-Chancellor level from universities across Australia and across India demonstrating our desire to invest in growing the skills for the Indian nation, meeting that desire of the Prime Minister of India to really invest in the youth of India and produce the workforce that will power India's future prosperity, and to furthering the research that will underpin prosperity and well-being, not only in India, but, as Minister Pradhan said so eloquently today, for the well-being of the world. Just a few of the ideas that were generated in the discussions today included working together to grow the PhD workforce that will staff the 2,000 universities that will be needed to underpin India's education future. Collaborating to produce the green steel that will enable India to be not just the third largest producer of steel in the world, but world leading in the production not only of steel, but green steel. Collaborating in sustainable agriculture, not only in old school ways, but in new school ways that start in space with low orbit satellites and come down to Earth in precision digital agriculture. And tapping into the amazing entrepreneurial ecosystem that is modern India to bring to life the research ideas that germinate in universities and come to fruition in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Australia and India have so many shared priorities for our universities and our research in health, in renewables, in digital and in agriculture. And we've committed to work together to progress those priorities for the benefit of both our nations. I have to say how impressed we have all been during these 2 days, not only by India's growth, and its commitment to long-term goals, but by the progress that it is clearly taking every day in achieving those goals and building the foundations for an even more prosperous future. As has been remarked on so many times over the days the delegation spent together, Australia and India are old friends. They're old friends with strong commitment to a future. And who better than old friends to be with on a pathway to that future? Thank you, everyone, for the contribution that you've made to a very successful couple of days. 2 days that are only the foundation for more growth to be had. And I look forward to the culmination of that in the Minister's oration this evening and in the connections that I know will be further cemented over dinner tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Renee. I think your opening remarks really share a lot of depth in terms of what the last 2 days have been about for our Australian delegation, who have had such an eye-opening experience, particularly today in Big City, but also throughout all of the sorts of roundtables and activities that they have been a part of, very long-lasting benefits for collaboration into the future. And with that, it gives me pleasure to now invite Katrina Jackson to the dais to introduce the Minister. Thanks, Katrina.
Well, it's only 25 pages. You guess. Good evening. It's an enormous pleasure to be back in India for my 3rd time this year. I'm Katrina Jackson, Chief Executive of Universities Australia, and it's terrific to be here representing the strength of Australia's university system. My task tonight is to introduce Education Minister Jason Clare, because people in the room don't seem to know who he is. That was a joke. Come on. No laughing, okay. But first I'd like to acknowledge the passion of the Indian Education Minister, Minister Pradhan, who joined us slightly later, and thank him on behalf of Australian universities. We know that this sort of enormous uptick in our relations doesn't happen without personal commitment at a ministerial level, and we thank him enormously for that. I think we all know we're very lucky to be involved at a moment of extraordinary growth and opportunity for both of our nations. We know this kind of blossoming is not possible without the full backing from both governments and the full backing of the university system. We can see that so clearly in the passion displayed by both ministers. I'd also like to acknowledge all the esteemed university business and industry and government leaders here tonight, including, of course, the Honourable Minister Sandy. Very good to see you. Australia and India, our parliamentarians and our people understand the power of education and research, the power to change lives, to transform economies, to make both our nations stronger and safer, more successful and more sustainable. Education and research are at the heart of the blossoming India-Australia relationship, a relationship that is growing stronger every single day with the backing of both our governments and our universities. A relationship that is so full of opportunity for our nations and for our people. Now we're getting to the nub now. Jason Clare was elected as a federal member for Flaxland in New South Wales in 2007. Previously, he's been Minister for Home Affairs, for Justice, for Defence Material, and he served with real distinction in those portfolios. But in 2022, he was appointed Minister for Education. And I think it's fair to say, I don't want to speak for you, Minister, but you were born for the job. He describes the education system as the great equaliser in an unequal world. Please join me in welcoming Jason Clare to the podium.
Katrina, the people in this room might know who I am, but I sometimes wonder whether my wife and children know who I am. My 7-year-old son rang me this afternoon as I was having lunch with Devendra to tell me that he loved me. I thought he really must miss me. And then told me that his size 2 soccer boots don't fit him and he needs a pair of special Lionel Messi soccer boots. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I should buy a size 4 or size 5 because this kid has more shoes than Melbourne Markets. Thank you, Katrina, for those very kind words. I don't know if they deserve it, but I live every else, thank you so much for the kindness of your words tonight. And my dear friend Lisa, thank you for the privilege of being able to give this oration tonight, an opportunity to put a bow tie on what we've rightly described as a momentous 2 days. It's only 2 days, isn't it? Everything moves very, very fast. The last time that I was in India, back in March in New Delhi, I spoke at a gathering like this, and I told the story of a little girl who was found on a train on her own. And she was 4 years old. She was left there on that train on her own by her parents, hoping, I guess, that someone would find her, that someone would save her. Someone did find her, someone did save her. That was the Salam Trust. They fed her, they housed her, they cared for her, and they educated her. And today that little girl is a fashion designer. She's worked in Paris, she's worked for some of the big fashion houses here in India. She's now starting her own brand. Her name is Khushbu. Now, I didn't know when I told that story that night in New Delhi that Khushbu was there in the audience listening to the words I had to say. And the next day, she took me back to that place where she grew up. And she showed me the dormitory where she slept and the classrooms where she learned. She showed me the place and the people who saved her, the place and the people who made her. And that is just one life, one story. But it shows what good people can do. And it shows what education can do. My friend, Indian Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan, and he'll be here with us very, very shortly, describes his job, describes my job, describes our job as the mother portfolio. The portfolio that makes everything else possible. And there's a real truth in that. A good education makes everything possible. And Khushbu's story is proof of that. A good education system can change more than just lives. It can change nations. I know my friend Dharmendra knows that. That's what the National Education Policy of India is all about. And I'm still shocked every time I think of it, every time I look at it, at the boldness of it, the audaciousness of it. It will mean that by the middle of the next decade, 1 in 4 people around the world get a university degree right here in India. We talked a moment ago about going from 1,000 universities to 2,000. That's big in and of itself, but what does it mean? What is the education that it provides? 1 in 4 people get a university degree on the planet, getting it right here. We talked over the last few days about a university system here today in India that educates 40 million people, that by the middle of this century will educate 90 million people. And that is nation-changing stuff. Even if it's only half implemented, it is nation-changing stuff. And we know that, the Australians in this room know that, because it's our story too. When I was a little boy, barely 35% of children finished high school. Now it's about 80%. Back then, giving away my age, 1972 I was born, 7.9% of young Australian adults had a uni degree. Now it's almost 50%. So in the course of my lifetime, in the course of the last 50 years, we've gone from a country where less than 1 in 10 people in their 20s and 30s had a university degree to now almost 1 in 2. And that has made Australia a different country. The country that existed when I was born does not exist anymore. We are stronger, we are smarter, we are wealthier, we do different jobs in different industries, we have a different economy, we are a different country. Truth be told though, this is a story that is only half told, because that change that's happened in Australia in the last 50 years is still happening. Today, 9 out of 10 new jobs being created require a young Australian not just to finish school, but then to go on to take vocational education or higher education in order to get that job, to build that career, to live that life. And that means that in the years ahead, even more young Australians will need to finish school than do today. Just like here in India, it means a significant increase in the number of people going to university by the middle of this century. And that's what the work that I'm doing back at home is all about, setting us up for this future. And that requires reform, not just of higher education, but to school education and to early education as well. Everything that we hope to achieve in higher education and getting more young Australians the sort of qualifications that our universities provide will only work if we unlock the opportunities that exist in school education and before a child even starts school. What I'm talking about here is a better and a fairer education system and a better and a fairer country. One that helps to ensure, as the Prime Minister of Australia often talks about, that no one's held back and no one's left behind. What India is trying to do here is the same, but on a monumentally bigger scale. Back at home, 300,000 Australians will turn 18 this year. 300,000. Here in India, 1 million people will turn 18 this month. 500 million people under the age of 23. Now just think of the sheer scale of all of that, my Australian friends. The size of it creates a challenge in and of itself. But there is a challenge for us in this too. When Demendra and I met in Sydney last year, he spoke at an event at the University of New South Wales, at my old university. And the event was on the top floor of my old law school. It was a warm night, not as warm as tonight, but the weather was good and you could see into the distance. And we stood out before he spoke and looked out at the Sydney skyline and then turned around and saw the airport in the distance and off into the eastern suburbs. And that night, Demendra talked to a group of Australian university leaders about his national education policy. And he laid down a challenge to Australia to be part of it, to be partners in this nation-changing effort, to set up campuses here in India so that more Indian students could study at an Australian university right here in India. But that challenge that Demendra made that night didn't drift off into the night sky unheard. It was heard, and it was heeded. And the universities that are here today and that were with me in March are proof of that. 5 months later, I came to India with a delegation of 10 vice-chancellors and a bloke that some of us might have heard of called Adam Gilchrist. And on that trip, we signed a memorandum for mutual recognition of qualifications, and we announced that the University of Wollongong would set up a campus at Gift City. The next week, the Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese, was here, and along with Prime Minister Modi, they announced that Deakin would do the same. And as we saw today, it hasn't taken very long for commitments to turn into concrete. We saw today those 2 campuses emerging out of the ground before our very eyes. And that's just the start. G'day, Demendra. A short interruption, a round of applause for Demendra. Was that challenge that you gave us that night didn't disappear into the night sky, that it was heard by Australian universities. And the proof of that is the agreement struck with Wollongong University, is the announcement that Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Albanese made about Deakin University, about the proof that these are not just words, not just contracts, that they are projects coming out of the ground. We saw it with our very own eyes today. It doesn't happen without your leadership, and I thank you for it. And I thank you for your friendship as well. This is just the start. There are more universities that want to be part of this vision, that want to be part of this future. And the seriousness with which Australian universities take this is visible from the calibre of the individuals that have joined me on this trip and are in this room tonight. Let me just take a moment to record who they are. Professor Ian Martin, the Vice-Chancellor of Deakin. Professor Patricia Davison, the Vice-Chancellor at the University of Wollongong. Professor Peter Hodge, the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Adelaide. Professor Renee Leon, the Vice-Chancellor at Charles Sturt University. Professor Pascal Cuesta, the Vice-Chancellor of Swinburne. Professor Adam Shoemaker, the Vice-Chancellor of Victoria University. Professor Susan Elliott, the Interim Vice-Chancellor and President of Monash University. I haven't said President for everybody. I get in trouble sometimes when I don't say Vice-Chancellor and President. Just assume when I say Vice-Chancellor, I say President as well. Professor Mark Hoffman, Deputy Vice-Chancellor and Vice President of the University of Newcastle. Mr Ian Watt, Deputy Vice-Chancellor and Vice President International at the University of Technology. Ms Jodie Mackay, Director, Australia-India CEO Forum and Vice-Chancellor's Fellows South Asia at Western Sydney University. The Honourable Lisa Singh, Chief Executive Officer of the Australia-India Institute. This is a long list. I'm going to keep going. Ms Katrina Jackson, Chief Executive Officer of Universities Australia. Ms Vicky Thompson, Chief Executive Officer and Director of the Group of 8. The Honourable Phil Honeywood, Chief Executive Officer, International Education Association of Australia. And Mr Paul Harris, Executive Director, Innovative Research Universities. A round of applause for all of those people. Pascal described universities today as the future makers. These are the future makers, our universities, but not just our universities. I want to recognise Saxon Rice and the team at ASPA. I want to recognise Anna Faithful, the Deputy Director General. I've got to say General there as well, don't I? Deputy Director in Skills and Training. Deputy Secretary Skills and Training. There we go, I've got it right. One of the things, Demendra, that you got right last year in the meeting we had in Sydney was that we shouldn't just talk about education, we need to talk about education and skills. And we heard you, that's why we've created this new council. And it only works by making sure that we have senior officials from both my department and Brendan's department and the regulators here together. And I'm so grateful that we have that representation in the room here tonight as well. So please put your hands together for everybody who's part of the delegation. And it's not just the team from our universities, it's not just the team from Brendan's portfolio that are here or that heard you. I heard you as well. On the way home from India in March, I asked my department to start work on a plan, on a strategy for Australia to help implement the National Education Policy, to help to meet the challenge, Demendra, that you laid down. And that's what this is, this document that we launched yesterday, a living document, if you will, our first attempt at identifying the ideas and the ways in which we can work together to help make a contribution to this audacious plan that India has. Now, I talked a moment ago about the last 2 days. We have got a lot done in just 2 days. 4 new agreements between Australian universities and Indian universities. We launched a new $11 million Matrix Scholars Program that will give the best and brightest young Indian students who are doing their PhDs and master's degrees the opportunity to complete those in Australia. And importantly, we focused on research collaboration, on the things we're doing today and where we can make a difference together in the future, particularly in areas like critical minerals. And with the outcomes of the first Australia-India Education and Skills Council, we've set out a roadmap for the next 12 months. And Lisa, you'll be glad to hear that I can also announce tonight funding for the work of the Australia-India Institute out to 2026. All of this only strengthens the ties that bind us together. strengthens the ties between our two great countries. Australia and India are good friends, and this is not a new friendship. This is a friendship that goes back a long, long time. When we were in New Delhi, Dharmendra, we drove from the India Gate along the Katavia Path. You remember? We drove past the Parliament to the North Block of the Secretariat where we stopped. Sounds like a romance novel. We got out of the car, now it's really starting to sound like a romance novel. We got out of the car, and at the main gate of the North Block there is a red stone column, one of 4 gifted to India in 1930. And this one was gifted by Australia to celebrate the inauguration of New Delhi. It was unveiled by Sir John Monash, a great Australian general, a hero of World War I. So great an Australian that a university has been named after him. And at the unveiling back then in 1930, he spoke about the friendship and what he called the kinship between Australian and Indian peoples. Dharmendra, when I see you in Australia next year, I hope to take you to another place, to Greenway Park in Cherrybrook in the northwest suburbs of Sydney. There is a monument with the names of 12 Indian Australians on it. All but one were born here in India. All died in Australian uniforms on the battlefields of World War I. Some of them, I suspect, might have been commanded by Sir John Monash. A lot has changed in more than 100 years. Today, 1 in 26 Australians can trace their roots back to here, to India. Punjabi is the fastest growing language in Australia. Hinduism is the fastest growing religion. Australia has more Indian residents per capita than any other country in the OECD. And that means something. That is a living bridge that binds our two countries together like never before. And it's my hope, in the work that we have done in the last 2 days, in the work that we will all do together in the years ahead, in the Mother portfolio, that we can strengthen these ties even more, that we can make the future together. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Minister.
I'm just checking whether the microphones work. They do. Liz is very happy at the back there. We're not going to commission a piece of Australia-India research focused on microphone technology.
No. Minister, you just outlined an incredible vision for the Australia-India education relationship. In fact, you've been doing that over the last 2 days. But you've also just shared the living bridge between our two countries, the long history between our two nations, our growing, burgeoning Indian diaspora, who are part of that living bridge, and your connection, stronger connection out of this trip indeed with your counterpart, Mr. Pradhan. Minister Pradhan has also today described the announcement of the Australian campuses at Vic City in India as a giant leap towards globalising India's education. So, Minister Clare, where do you see the Australia and Indian education relationship in, say, 10 years from now?
You know, I don't think we'll recognise it today. I think it will be so different that it's hard to even imagine. But what I've said on this trip is that we need to reimagine what international education is. For so long we've thought that international education, or that relationship between India and Australia in education, is about Indian students coming to Australia. International education doesn't have to be a one-way street. And what we've seen on this trip, what we've seen in these agreements and how these campuses being built, is that it can be more than that. That Indian students can get an education from an Australian university here in India. And that's important because the scale of the ambition in the national education policy, the number of young people that are going to seek and want and need a higher education in India is so big. Not all of those young people are going to be able to do an undergraduate degree or a master's degree or a PhD in Australia or the UK or the US. Most will want to do that here. And Australia can be part of that opportunity. We touched on online education at our Skills Council meeting today. I think that's going to be a bigger part of the future as well. In order to educate so many young people, we have to rethink what education is and what it can be. And if COVID has taught us that we can educate young people online in extremis, what are the good things that we learn about that we can apply to educate people all around the world? So I think that's part of it too. And then you can't have a conversation about what the relationship looks like in 10 years' time without talking about research. And I was so glad that that was a focus of the council meeting yesterday. It was a focus of the session that we had earlier this afternoon. We do great work in research. It's catalogued in the work that you and your team did, Lisa. It's touched on in the strategy. But I think we teased out of the conversation today that there is so much more that we can do together. So the High Commissioner's not here, but he's talked at length about the idea of using the synergies in our two economies to do work on lithium and battery technology. I would hope in 10 years' time that we're seeing more young Indian students being educated in Australian institutions, either with campuses here, joint degrees or online, but also that you see the sort of research ideas we were talking about today made real in 10 years' time.
Absolutely. I think that the power of research is that we're actually solving shared challenges that both of our countries face, and there's been a lot of that discussed
that the world faces.
Exactly.
That the world faces. The things we do together can shape the world. As Pascal said, the future makers. These are things that we can do together that won't just help Australia and India, but will help the world.
One of the things you said today, and listening to you speak at Gift City, and we had that momentous occasion of both Deakin and Wollongong campuses being unveiled there, is that international education is not a one-way street. As you said, it's not just about students coming to Australia, it's about Australian universities going to them. I wanted to ask you, in terms of, obviously we've got two campuses now that have forged that pathway, what would it really mean though for our people of people languages?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that as I was making my remarks. You have to reinvest in relationships. The strength of my friendship with Amanda is because we get to see each other more often than we see our families sometimes. Face to face, I talked about how important online is. We had Brendan as part of that meeting. But part of what makes this special, what makes this relationship special, is the people-to-people mix. Catching up regularly as ministers, but officials doing the same thing, universities doing the same thing, and then that collaboration with business as well. I think maybe one of the missing parts of the last 2 days was business. And as I think about what we might do in Australia next year, we'll bring business to the table as well. You asked me that, I guess, in the context of that living bridge of Indian Australians, is that right? I think there's a couple of reasons why, as I said earlier today, the stars are aligning. There are strategic reasons why Australia and India want to be friends today. And the Quad is a strategic manifestation of that. But there are other really human reasons why Australia and India are friends. And that's because there are 1 million Australians who can trace their heritage back to India.
Yeah, I'm one of them.
That's exactly right. And that is worth its weight in gold in terms of building a bond. You know, that often we make the refrain about, what is it, sort of curry, Commonwealth and cricket. I resist the temptation to use that cliche because I think it's deeper than that. It's about people. And that is the basis on which we can forge an even deeper friendship.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask the Minister one more question, and then I will give the opportunity for the audience to also ask one or two. I know the Minister's on a tight time frame and a flight out of India tonight. So, Minister, finally, I just want to ask you about your trip earlier in March this year. I had the privilege, a few of us here did have the privilege of joining you for that as well. I remember you signed an agreement then with Minister Pradhan to mutually recognise higher education qualifications of both nations. Quite a remarkable signing. Could you share with us what you expect some of the benefits of that agreement are going to be?
First, we shouldn't understate the significance of that agreement being signed. Tony wears the scars of a long, long time in developing that agreement. I think you told me today, Tony, this is something that's been a decade in the making. The fact that it was signed, that it was forged out of that free trade agreement under the former government, I want to recognise that. This is an area of real bipartisanship. The fact that that emerged out of that agreement and that was signed last year is a demonstration of the fact that Australia and India are leaning into each other, that we want to work together. This is the broadest agreement of its kind that India has ever signed with another country. So I want to shine a light on that. Now, what does it mean? What can it mean? Well, that's up to us. But, what it means in essence is that young Indians who do a degree here and want to then come to Australia to do further study, a master's or a PhD, that undergraduate degree is recognised here, and vice versa. Now, what it could mean in the future is the next step to the recognition of professional qualifications. Well, that's up to us. But I think it's a foundation stone which has taken a while to lay. I'm glad it's here. Now we need to make sure it's fully implemented. One of the things we spoke about yesterday was what it might mean for online education. And that's a work in progress.
Okay, can I ask anyone in the audience wish to ask Minister Clare a question? And in doing so, if I give you the call, could you please stand and share what your name is? Thank you, sir.
My name is Sunil Parekh. Sir, I would like to know in Australia, how are you looking at the challenges posed by technology and the education sector?
Well, I'll give you one example, and that's AI, ChatGPT, GPT-4 in our universities. I'm sure the challenge exists in your universities just like it exists in ours. Vice Chancellors must be grappling with this as we speak. I can see from the sort of the smiles or the frowns that it's a challenge for you. Challenge in our high schools, in our primary schools as well. When I think about technological challenges, I think about how do I get my 7-year-old off the iPad, to be honest. But we're doing a bit of work in Australia about how do you make sure that AI is used for good and not for bad. That it is used in a way which can help to advance education and not be a way of avoiding learning, getting marks in the classroom that you don't deserve, for example. Or that the privacy of children is protected. I worry as the father of a young child that what a child types into the internet then gets spat back at you as advertising. And what if a child types in a question into generative AI technology and then that becomes a TikTok ad the next day? And so there's some of the sort of very practical, real examples that we're focused on in terms of the way technology interacts with students in the classroom, whether it's at school or whether it's at university. At the other end of the spectrum, it's what does technology look like and feel like in a decade or 2 decades' time? And quantum computing and the work that people like Michelle Simmons is doing at the University of New South Wales is at the cutting edge of that. And we talked about how we can collaborate together. We talked about how universities are the future makers. I can't think of a better example than that in terms of developing technology which will reinvent the way every business works.
Thank you. Yes.
Good evening, myself Vinod Agarwal. We talked about research and joint PhD. So what are the plans that this joint research can be transferred to the industries for the betterment of the society?
Joint research with industries? Yeah. Well, we had a session on that today. And when I spoke at that session, I pointed to Gift City as a physical demonstration of how universities and industry can and should combine and collaborate. I thought it was very, very visionary of Prime Minister Modi, when he was the Chief Minister here, to conceive a place that didn't just have business but had universities embedded in the city. Because without universities, you don't have the skilled workers to fill those office towers. But more importantly, without universities collaborating with business, you don't have the new ideas that create the new economy of the future. There are many different things that Australian universities do in business today. We had a great session about the collaboration, translation, commercialisation of research. There is much, much more that we can do, both with Indian universities but with Australian businesses here. And that's why I said it a moment ago, I think this is an area that we should focus on in our next council meeting in Australia next year. Bring business to the table so that it's not just universities talking to universities or governments talking to governments, but we have business as part of that conversation.
Thank you so much, Minister, for delivering the Institute's 2023 Annual Oration, for your dedication to the bilateral education relationship as demonstrated by the last 2 days and earlier this year. The future is very bright for both of our two countries under your stewardship, and we thank you very much. And that gives me great pleasure to introduce someone who has also dedicated very much his efforts to making India's education system truly global. Please join me in welcoming Minister of Education in India, Shri Dharmendra Pradhanji, to give some closing remarks. Thank you.
Good evening, friends. My dear friend, Australian Minister of Education, Mr. Clare, Director of Australia-India Institute, Madam Disha Singh, distinguished Vice Chancellor of different universities, senior officers from Australian government and Government of India, civil society from India, friends from media. Last 2 days, we couldn't find any time to, only slack time. We totally packed from morning to evening. And I don't know whose plan is this one. Before half an hour of the flight time, I think this is Matthew's plan. So, Mr. Clare, thank you for this warm participation. I am happy you are right in your observation. India, Mr. Clare, India is a very traditional society. And today morning we were discussing about, yes, my dear friend, the energetic Home and Youth Affairs Minister of Gujarat government, my younger brother, Mr. Harsh Angri is also here. In our society, being a rooted society, we believe whenever you visit any friend's house, you must take some precious gift to his house. And I'm thankful on the eve of Deepavali, the auspicious occasion, you come to India with 2 universities. Thank you, Mr. Clare. And friends, it starts 2 days, and I think you are a Federal Minister of Australia. In 2023, I think India may be the only country where you have visited twice. That's true? So congratulations, Mr. Clare. Let's just see our depth of our relationship. Again, at the cost of repetition, I am saying that. In last April, both the Prime Minister met on the sideline of Quad. Again, they met somewhere in the other platform also. They might have met during Bali. They met for several times in 2022. I visited Australia in 2022 August. Mr. Clare was here in March and met Minister of Skill and Training, Mr. O'Connor, in July. And I met Minister of Butler, the Health Minister, in the month of August. And here again, Mr. Clare is in India. This shows the depth of our relationship. And both our leaders met thrice this year. And we decided to open, and I am happy, in our national education policy, we have envisioned to internationalize our education system. Yes, internationalization is a two-way issue. Now, Indian students are going to Australia for study. Now, with opening up these 2 universities and few more in near future, more Indian students will get privilege to study in Australian standards. That about the collaboration we have envisioned today jointly. We talked a lot of area, starting from agriculture to space, from quantum computing to semiconductor, AI, from water management to healthcare management. I think all the area we have covered, and this is not going to benefit only both the countries. This collaboration is going to benefit entire humanity. The emerging economy, the underdeveloped economy, and the future belongs to the eastern part of the globe. And Australia and India, there is a natural habitat of the eastern part of the globe, and with the visionary leadership of Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Albanese, our relationship will be thicker, and this societal connect, now we are no more. I am happy you have mentioned about Punjabi language, and in our national education policy we have envisioned all the Indian languages as national language. I am happy you have recognized our national language, the colloquial national language in Australia also. Thank you. And you also recognize our civilizational root of Hinduism. I am happy you showed your democratic spirit. And as I said in my Australian visit last time, education is the mothership of all the departments, the mother of all departments. For the future, we have to strengthen the bridge we have envisioned. You are a strong pillar of this futuristic bridge. Thank you for spending 2 days in India. Come again, come frequently. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.